One of our family traditions is to watch the movie Groundhog Day on this auspicious holiday, Groundhog Day. I really like that movie a lot, and I've used it in discussions about movies with spiritual meaning. Most folks don't think of it as a spiritual movie, but I think it is, and very, very much so. Have you seen it? A self-centered weatherman is begrudgingly sent from Pittsburgh to cover the Groundhog Day events in Little Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. And his conduct from the get-go is selfish and arrogant and just plain mean at times. His name's Phil, and he's played by Bill Murray, so as you might imagine, he's also grotesque in his "the world revolves around me" approach to life. It's a very, very funny movie. And accompanying Phil on his trip is a meek, peace-loving new producer named Rita, who's played by Andie MacDowell. Phil's smitten with her. And at the start of the movie, he acts boorish in his feeble attempts to woo her. And what's worse, though, is his conduct is awful toward others, especially the poor and the sick and outcasts that he encounters during the day. And by the end of the day, he's behaved like a real jerk. And then something mystical happens. Phil awakes to find he has to live through the same Groundhog Day in the same place with the same people, and no one knows it but him. It's a zany time loop. And Phil wakes up hundreds, maybe thousands of times, reliving that Groundhog Day. Very quickly, Phil concludes, since there's no consequence to messing up his do-over day, that he can die, get arrested, and eat all the junk food he wants. It doesn't seem to matter, because he awakes to do it over again the very next day. And so at first Phil does more self-centered things, stealing and conniving and even killing. But he also spends a lot of time trying to get better at wooing Rita day after day. His self-centeredness causes him to fail. And slowly, ever so slowly, Phil begins to take an interest in relating to all the people that he's stuck in this time loop with. And in his awkward pursuit of Rita, he gradually learns how to love all his neighbors and to appreciate the world around him. He learns to have compassion and the desire for well-being of everyone that he's stuck in that time loop with. He learns their names, learns their troubles and all the little accidents, needs, and illnesses that they face in that day. And eventually he goes about saving everyone he can in that little community, in the only life that he seems to now have. And by the end of the movie, Phil blesses the poor and the needy and outcasts with kindness and compassion. He's transformed. People he treated as expendable now matter very much to him. And in the final segment of the film, Phil is Christ-like. He's a man who lives for love, not just love for Rita, but love for every single person in that community. It's a remarkable story of reincarnation and resurrection and the power of love. It's a story of one man's transformation through the pursuit of love, from a way of lust and selfishness to a way of love and selflessness, a way to be Christ in the world. And it's a story with a message that no matter what we've done, we can make this moment and all the ones that follow about bringing heaven to earth. We can transform the world we live in, write a new script, change roles, bring heaven to earth. And Jesus' teachings are about just that. They are about bringing heaven to earth. And for Jesus, heaven is about making life good for all in life, not after life. And Phil ends up doing just that in Groundhog Day for all of Punxsutawney. And the text that we heard Dick read is Jesus' way of describing what the new world will look like when we do our work and heaven finally fully breaks in. It's a big portion of Jesus' roadmap to heaven. Beatitudes is a Latin word for blessing. And today's teaching from the Sermon on the Mount are called the Beatitudes because, as we heard, they are blessings. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on Jesus' account. Well, most of us have heard and read those words so often that sometimes I think we have become a little numb to them. We have trouble hearing what they are saying. They are like lyrics to a song that we tend to just hum along and hear in our head, but not really pay attention to. And even if we do pay attention, we may not actually understand them. We're usually taught they are telling us how we are to be in life if we want to get the stated rewards. But understanding the Beatitudes that way, if you think about it, doesn't mesh with our experiences. The truth is, the poor in spirit, those in mourning, the meek, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers, the persecuted and reviled, by and large, do not get rewarded in this life. The earthly way as a whole does not dole out rewards to us when we are any of those things. And certainly no one longs to be or strives to be or wants to be poor in spirit or mourning or persecuted. And while it's a good thing to be meek and merciful and pure in heart, those things are generally also not rewarded in the worldly way of doing things, are they? Even peacemakers as a whole usually go unrewarded, at least in earthly ways. And so, what the heck is Jesus teaching in the Beatitudes? Well, we need to consider the context that they're preached in to answer that. As first century Palestinian Jews, Jesus and his followers had two great calamities that weighed on their minds. One was the existing occupation and oppression by the Roman Empire, which kept the Jewish people's spirits understandably down. And the other was the Babylonian exile, a story from hundreds of years earlier that set a benchmark for Jewish homeland calamity, but also led to scriptural instruction and wisdom and a theology from which all future generations could turn to during calamities. And both Roman and Babylonian occupations, oppressive, overwhelming military forces captured the homeland and caused the Jewish people to mourn the losses that came with the brutal violence, and also brought them into meek submission. And as people of the God of love and justice, they hungered and they thirsted for righteousness. Jesus' teachings called them to this by loving God and loving neighbor and loving enemies, by being merciful and pure of heart, and by being peacemakers. And in keeping those teachings and following Jesus' way, Matthew's community had experienced being reviled and persecuted, just as Jesus did. And so we have Rome crushing Jesus' contemporaries, and the memory of Babylon crushing them in the past, and the lessons that are learned, passed on. This is the context in which Jesus gives the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus, we are also told at the start of the reading, went up the mountain, and he sat down and his disciples came to him. And Matthew's community would have heard this as an echo of Moses giving the law on Mount Sinai, as well as a usual image of the day of a revered rabbi whose followers gathered round as they all sat and listened to the rabbi teach. And so the context sets up this other thing we don't tend to hear, that Jesus is the new Moses and a revered rabbi who is teaching. And what he teaches in today's lectionary text echoes Isaiah, who wrote during the Babylonian exile. Listen to this excerpt from Isaiah 61. See if we can discern its echoes in the Beatitudes. Isaiah wrote, "The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me. He has set me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and release to the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, to comfort all who mourn, to provide for those who mourn in Zion, to give them a garland instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the mantle of praise instead of faint spirit. They will be called oaks of righteousness. And because their shame was double and dishonor was proclaimed as their lot, therefore they shall possess a double proportion. Everlasting joy shall be theirs. For I, the Lord, love justice. I will faithfully give them their recompense, and I will make an everlasting covenant with them. All who see them shall acknowledge that they are a people whom the Lord has blessed." Isaiah 61, verses 1 to 9. Can you hear how Isaiah and Jesus address the realities of brutal occupation very similarly? The occupations and oppressions have people broken and poor in spirit, mourning and subdued by oppressors. And brilliantly, both Isaiah and Jesus offer the promise of a reordering of everything, all of that. They propose a new script where all parts being played are transformed. They're rewritten. The lowly are blessed on earth. You see, when heaven comes about, when we are in God's domain here, the tables are turned. And not just later, but now. And not just later and now, but before as well. The message is all who have been broken and poor in spirit. Those who have been mourning and subdued by oppressors have had God with them. God always has and always will be at the side of those in sorrow, those who are distressed, those who are reviled, those who are oppressed. And God is, always has been and always will be with and in those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, those who are merciful, who are pure in heart, those who are peacemakers. These declarations serve to comfort and honor those in the past and in the present who have by their oppressors been made meek, unbroken in spirit, and set to mourning. And they also comfort and honor those who oppose oppression and find ways to be merciful and pure in heart and peacemakers, even in the face of persecution and revilement. You see, the Beatitudes announce the blessing of those who have been oppressed and those who non-violently oppose the oppression. They call humanity to a time and a place in the future where heaven is on earth, precisely because humanity reorders things to God's way, a way that already exists in God's realm. The good news is, borrowing the metaphor in the movie Groundhog Day, humanity keeps living in this loop that seems to be unending, but it will end when we learn as a whole to bless with love and compassion those who are broken in spirit, those who are mourning, those who are meek and subdued and outcasts. It's heaven on earth, because the honoring of powerful oppressors is replaced by the honoring of those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, those who are merciful and those who are peacemakers. To Isaiah and to Jesus, God already blesses the broken and those who are responding to God's call to mercy and justice and righteousness and peace. In other words, God's way exists, and it needs to come to earth to be our way. And Jesus is not just teaching the oppressed and the opposers of oppression have God's blessing. Jesus is teaching that humans, not just God, need to dare to also bless the oppressed and the opposers of oppression, thus bringing heaven to earth. People, most especially the powerful have tried to make the Beatitudes about being docile and getting rewards from God in the end for submission to oppression. The Beatitudes are not about that. They are about a radical transformation from the earthly way of accepting oppression and its results to the heavenly way of compassion and caring and honor for all, for everyone. So the oppression's ended, and we are all blessed by humanity, the way that God blesses us, not all, now, forever. Amen.